Hello, I'm David Robledo, a graduate student in technical communication and rhetoric here at Texas Tech. Because of my experience as a reporter in the South Texas region, covering issues that relate to economy and culture, I've been asked to share some of my insights about some ways that narrative is used in attempts to shape the futures of communities as they respond to change. I was raised in this region, and my family history is one that is deeply tied to the productivity of the ecological environment. On my mom's side, we were fishers. Some of my earliest memories are spending time with my grandfather, a humble fisher who knew the best places on the South Texas coast for fishing and crab trapping. I vividly remember the first time that he took me to trap crabs, showing me how to tie a chicken bone to a string, toss it into the bay, and then gently pull it up to lead a crab just to the water's edge. Once the crab was visible, he'd scoop it up with a net. After a night of trapping crabs and listening to his stories of a life at sea, we'd head home with dozens of fresh blue crabs ready for a feast the following day. One of the places that my grandfather would take me to trap crabs is a place that many other families from this region share memories of. It's at an inlet of the Brownsville Ship Channel. What used to be a dirt path to the inlet is now a county park, which you can see here, where families launch boats and kayaks or fish and crab off of the public piers. Although catches aren't quite as good as they were back then, that doesn't seem to deter the many people who still continue to visit this site. Because this region is poor, corporations that want to ship liquefied natural gas from the port of Brownsville, the valley's largest city and the nation's poorest of its size, have found eager audiences for their sales pitch about the jobs and prosperity that their industry could bring. Government agencies and quasi-public corporations have already spent millions of dollars and plan to spend upwards of $1 billion to create infrastructure here for LNG development, including a pipeline, a deepened ship channel, and highway spurs. These promises of jobs, however, may come with a high cost to the indigenous economy of this coastal region. While this region may be poor and consistently ranks among one of the poorest communities of its size in the nation, its economy is both consistent and deeply tied to history and culture. This is the indigenous economy of the deep South Texas region, and it is an economy that depends on a healthy ecological environment. Not far away from this inlet, where my grandfather would take me crab trapping, about 2 miles by water and about 10 miles by road, lies South Padre Island. Shallow water fishing, Dolphin Cove sightseeing tours, bird watching excursions, sunning and playing on South Padre's velvety sand. These are some of the thrills that draw more than 1 million tourists each year to the poorest metro region of the United States, making tourism and ecotourism the biggest economic driver here at the Rio Grande Valley's southern edge. Chances are that if you live in Texas, you've visited South Padre at least once. And if you've been there once, you've probably returned. Home to just 3,000 permanent residents, South Padre Island offers first world amenities such as restaurants, bars, retail shops, and nightclubs, only yards away from world-class sport fishing, bird watching, and beachcombing. There aren't many places in the world where people can be surrounded by such archaic wildlife as they are on this beach that helps etch the United States' southwestern boundary. Liquefied natural gas development, however, threatens the relatively pristine ecology of this South Padre Island region. Energy companies are looking at the Port of Brownsville to set up shop for LNG development, where rent is cheap and space is copious, hoping to build Leviathan complexes of smokestacks, refrigeration chambers, and sewers that will produce LNG for export to China and beyond. Because Brownsville's deepwater channel is edged by plenty of inexpensive land, 3 LNG conglomerates are trying to establish operations in this coastal zone, which is populated by brown pelicans, ocelots, sea turtles, dolphins, and a host of other endangered and protected wildlife. Liquefying natural gas brings pollution. In Brownsville, the proposed LNG facilities would dump millions of gallons of heated effluent each day into one of the healthiest shallow water bays in the world. The plant's 500-foot flaring towers, which release mercury, hydrogen sulfide, helium, carbon dioxide, hydrocarbons, and other impurities from the natural gas, would burn a couple of miles downwind from the state's most popular beach. Local environmental groups estimate that air pollution will quadruple in the Brownsville-South Padre Island metroplex, a 10-mile stretch of coastline, residential neighborhoods, and small businesses that may soon sit under a haze of pollution already familiar to residents of industrialized regions like Corpus Christi, Galveston, and Houston. The purification and refrigeration process for LNG is so energy intensive that the amount of greenhouse gas emissions for this region would be staggering. Bringing LNG to estuaries near the South Padre Island area threatens its cultural and ecological economy. Although South Padre Island is a tiny town, it annually generates $6.4 million in property taxes, $6.5 million in hotel-motel taxes, and is responsible for about $1 billion in economic activity and more than 20,000 jobs in an otherwise economically deflated, job-poor region. All of SPI's tourism-related jobs aren't necessarily great jobs, but some are. Quite a few restaurateurs, boat shop owners, eco-tour entrepreneurs, and real estate investors earn $200,000 annually or more. This indigenous interaction of culture, economy, and ecology is threatened by this LNG development. These factories would be built between 2 wildlife sanctuaries in the Texas Bahia Grande, the nation's largest wetland restoration project. The introduction of the technological artifacts of the LNG industry threaten to pollute estuary that a tourism and fishing economy depend on, posing a threat to indigenous systems in which people live and thrive. This threat has fueled a regional contingency who are working to prevent LNG development from taking hold. This group is known as Save RGV from LNG. You can find them at savergvfromlng.com. And they're using the stories of this indigenous economy as a narrative attempt to interpret the potential consequences. These stories center around the role of nature as a vital element in the economy and culture. For example, the uncanny variety of birds in this region has made it one of the world's biggest draws for bird-watching enthusiasts, who make up a major group in the region's tourism economy. They come to birdwatch, photograph, stargaze, camp, hike, kicking in about $350 million to the region and generating nearly 5,000 jobs, according to a report from Texas A&M University's Office of AgriLife Extension. The bay itself is a rare ecosystem, the largest of only 6 hypersaline bays in the world. Saltier and more dense than regular seawater, hypersaline bays are very shallow bodies of water, found on coastlines where fresh water is scarce. They are fertile incubators of unique ecosystems. The abundance of trout, red drum, flounder, and numerous other sport fish in this bay has made South Padre and the surrounding coastal region the nation's premier destination for shallow water fishing. Sport fishing adds roughly another $400 million to the local economy. Major fishing tournaments are held in the Laguna Madre and along South Padre almost every weekend throughout the summer. Then, there are stunning amounts of money added to the economy by those who travel simply to enjoy the beach. Visit South Padre on any summer Saturday, and you'll see some 10,000 people playing in the sun along the 2-mile stretch of public and semi-private beach. In terms of stimulating a regional economy, South Padre Island outperforms all other Texas beaches. Occupancy taxes alone bring in $7 million annually for this town of 3,000 permanent residents. More than 1 million visitors make it to the island every year, generating a broadly calculated economic impact of more than $1 billion. Dolphin Cove is just one of the assets of the Laguna Madre, which stretches for more than 100 miles along the Texas and Tamaulipas coastlines. The Laguna Madre is home to several species of sea turtles, including the world's most endangered species, the Kemp's Ridley. In this context of indigenous economy, we're looking at the present environmental and cultural economy as a living indigenous system that is tied to ecology. Disturbing these existing cultural economy systems presents a condition that is similar in possible results to the loss of resources in a story that's told by Lewis Owens. In his essay Burning the Shelter, Owens chronicles how he dismantled and burned down a shelter as part of a Forest Service plan to remove man-made structures from wilderness. After burning this shelter, he then met 2 old Native American women hiking up the mountain, destined for the home that Owens had just burned down. LNG construction in Deep South Texas threatens several systems that may be seen similarly to the shelter that Owens burned down. First, the commercial shrimping fishing is a strong industry in Deep South Texas, and it's a large economic driver in an impoverished economic zone of mostly Hispanic residents. That's our presentation for today. Here we have a rough reference list. Also, I'd like to let you know that the information in this presentation comes from 2 news stories that I published in the Fort Worth Weekly and San Antonio Current. Since the creation of this lesson, Save RGV from LNG has been able to stop LNG production on the South Texas coastline. They've won a few very significant lawsuits against these LNG companies and the Port of Brownsville. You can find updates by Googling or using another web browser to search for information about Save RGV from LNG, South Texas, Brownsville, South Padre Island, and similar keywords.